The internal elevation tool can be found in the toolbox under the document section, and here it is here. The internal elevations facility in ArchiCAD has been improved greatly in version 11. So if I click on the tool, up here in the toolbox or the default settings, we can see a number of parameters, and of course if I use my scroll wheel we can see the rest of the parameters. However, we're going to double click on the icon and work through the parameters like that. But first, there's a couple of things that we should go over here. First of all, we have access to the layers here, and then we have the layers palette. This is where we can choose which layer the marker will reside on. Then we have a number of geometric methods in placing the internal elevation marker. This first one is just placing a single elevation. So if I was to draw an elevation on the floor plan using this method, I would left mouse click once, move my mouse along the wall that I want shown, and the first line that I draw is the back of the elevation, or the furthest point that you want the elevation to display. Then I left mouse click again, and then a black pencil comes up. Now I have to move out probably beyond what I want to display, and this is the front of the elevation. So if I left mouse click again, there we have our elevation marker. Now over in the navigator we notice we have new categories: sections, elevations, internal elevations, worksheets and details. It's worth noting that each of these display different icons. So if we're using the internal elevation marker, it will correspond with this icon over here, whereas elevations and sections, worksheets and details all have their own type of icon. So if I want to open that internal elevation that I just placed, it says IE 0601. So over here, that's the corresponding number. I can expand that, and then if I open it up, there's my elevation. So I'm just going to click on that and delete that again. Delete anyway. I'm also going to delete this first one. The next method is a polygonal method. We can create as many elevations with this one marker as we like. We'll talk about that in a second. And we also have the square method. So if I was to use this one, I just drag out a rectangle similar to a slab, and I'm clicking on the back part, or the rear of the elevation that I want to see. Then I'm going to drag in and draw and click again, and that will place my elevations. If I left mouse click in the project navigator, we can see I have my 4 elevations there. So I'm just going to go Control Z and undo that, and then this one here is a rotator rectangle, where we can draw a rotator rectangle first and do the same thing coming back in the other way. So I'm just going to undo that as well. Next we can show the internal elevation vertical range, and by clicking on that we can select one of the 3 parameters there. So now if I double click on the pulsing icon, this palette comes up. Of course we can use favorites. If we have a favorite elevation marker that we have selected, we can just click on that and select it. We obviously don't have one at the moment. Under General, Reference ID, we can call this elevation anything we like. Might just change that to 1, but I can also use auto text and get this marker to pick up the zone number, zone category, elevation orientation, etc. And I can also name it. Once again, I have an auto text field there with the same parameters. So I'm not going to put a name there at the moment. Then we can create an internal elevation with a reference to either the viewpoint or the first place drawing of the viewpoint. Then we can define the status. It will rebuild the model automatically every time, or I can get the internal elevation to rebuild only when I ask it to by pushing a button, or I can explode the internal elevation into a drawing. We'll go over that a bit later. Then we have the choice of showing the marker on all stories or just on the home story. The home story is the story that we're working on at the moment, or the one that's bold in our navigator. So I'm just going to put that back to all. In vertical range, in the vertical range, if I check infinite, it will give me an internal elevation at that marker throughout the whole model. Then if we check detect and fit to zones, if we've placed or defined the building with zones, it will automatically pick up that zone and dimension the internal elevation to, as the name suggests, fit that particular zone. This can be a great time saver, especially when you use it in conjunction with the auto text from up here, where we can give it a reference ID and name that can be drawn from the zone that you've placed in the room. Finally, we can also consider the solid operations that we've created or tell it to ignore it. So once we're happy with all that, we go to the marker. Now the marker, we can place a marker individually for each interior elevation, or we can place a common marker that will be the marker for the whole interior elevation group. Here we can choose the types of marker. I'm just going to leave it on whatever it's set on. We can choose the pen type, use a symbol type, the font, all this stuff's pretty standard. At the moment I might just leave it on individuals. There's some other parameters there that are fairly self-explanatory. If I close that up, go to marker head, we can choose different heads. Might choose that one. Then over here the custom text for the first row and second row. So I'm just going to collapse that again. Under model display, we can define the cut elements, and as soon as I check that, the pen types come up for the actual elements that are being cut. So I can define the outside line and the fill or the hatch pattern and the background. So I'm just going to uncheck that again. Exclude view blocking walls. This is a neat little feature. If a wall is blocking one of the views, I can choose to delete it from the internal elevation, and I can also hide cut elements. So if the internal elevation marker is going through an object, it won't show it. I'm going to collapse that now. Uncut elements, there's a number of parameters there as well. These have been changed from where they used to reside in the last version. So over here we can actually do nothing, uniform pen color, own material colors, non-shaded, and obviously a shaded view. I'm just going to leave that on nothing at the moment. Uniform pen for uncut contours, and 3D hatching, so I can choose to hatch it if I want to, and choose transparency. Now this used to be done through the 3D window before, or the 3D window panel before. Now I can check it here. So if we're looking through an interior elevation with a window and we want to see the items that are behind that space, behind the window, we check it, and if we don't want to see through it, we uncheck it. Sun and shadows, we can place sun shadows by checking there, and then there's a number of pen types that we can use for that as well, and different fill types. So might just make that black so you can see it, but I'm just going to uncheck that because I don't want vectorial hatchings. If I close that, once we're happy with that, story levels. This defines the markers that are placed in elevations themselves. Once again, show story levels. Display only is just on the screen. None is obviously none. And display and output displays on the elevation and it prints. So essentially this is, it won't print, this does print. I can choose the line that the story markers will be generated with. Different pen types once again. I can put markers on both sides of the elevation or just one. I can also not have lines that go through the elevations. Offset to boundary. I can also define the distance between the edge of the building or the last element that's in your internal elevation and where the markers start, just by changing that figure to something larger than it is at the moment. At the moment we've got story markers. There's a number of different story markers. You can also create your own and load that if you want. There's the pen type for my internal elevation. Fonts, and once again there's some more custom settings there. There's a layer that the internal elevation mark will be placed on, and once we're happy with everything we just push OK. We've already created a single internal elevation. This time we're going to create a number of elevations using the polygonal tool. So I'm going to left mouse click on that, and to show you what we mean, I'm going to click on the back part of the wall, and when I want to finish, I double click, make sure the pen's black, and then I move my pen away, and then I click again, and then we can see all the different elevations in there. But I'm just going to push Control A and select it, and I'm going to open the tool up and choose one common marker. Once I've got the common marker there, I push OK, and then it removes all the separate marker heads, and there it is there. I can just hit the arrow tool, then I can just left mouse click on the center node in that marker. Make sure in the pet palette, I'm still holding my left mouse button down, make sure in the pet palette I've got this upper left hand icon which is move sub element. Let my mouse go, and then I can move that marker to anywhere I like. So once that's done, we can see in the internal elevations area in the navigator, we have all our elevations here. If I need to move something, I can hold the shift key down, select it. I can break the elevation, or I can move the whole elevation back a little bit. So I might just move that back, and this one can also move back, and move that back to there. Once it's all okay, I've got all my elevations. All done in one shot. Now if I go back to the ground floor, next if I was going to place an internal elevation using a different geometry method, first of all I might place a zone. If I click on the zone tool and open it up, I'm going to call this zone the bathroom. The zone height is 2700. I might just make that bath, and I'm just going to push OK. If I hold the spacebar down, I should be able to click inside the room and place the zone by left mouse clicking again. Once the zone has been placed there, I'm going to go back to my internal elevation and open it up, delete that, and just use the auto text zone name, and might input the zone number. Then I'm going to click detect and fit to zones, and there's no solid element operation, so I'm just going to push OK. So now I'm just going to click in my areas where I want the elevation, drawing the back of the elevation first to where we want to be looking at it from, and I'm just going to Control Z undo that. So I actually want to place a single marker such as that, push OK. Just going to do that again, the back of the elevation marker, and there it is there. Now as soon as I've done that, we can see we've got bath R2 and all our elevations are marked correctly. So now I'm going to go to my page layout, open this layout here, which is just a blank layout, go back to my project, and here's a neat thing. I can left mouse click on the bathroom icon and drag it onto the floor plan, and here it looks like it's just placing all the elevations onto the page, but it will auto arrange them as well, and we can see there's all my elevations. I need to make those markers a bit smaller. There's not enough room. Perhaps if I change them all to 1 to 50 scale, if I right mouse click on the drawing settings, change them to 1 to 50, push OK. That's a bit better. I'm just going to delete everything now. Another thing I can do is select both of them by holding Shift key and drag them both onto the layout, and then it should space them all out. If I was to set them 1 to 50 in these floor plans, it would obviously come in at 1 to 50. So now it's placed all the drawings like that. We can zoom in, and very efficient way of working, and they're all live model views. So if I need to change something, I right mouse click on it, go to open source view, and here is the model based view. And now if I need to go back to the layout, I push F7, that's the shortcut for it. Now we're back at the layout. So it's a very quick way of working. Right mouse click, any drawing, go to open source view, make your changes, and F7, you're back at your layout. So that's the internal elevation marker. So that's the new internal elevation tool.